Well, this has turned into quite the ordeal. Let me show you how we got to this spot. My hope is that this will help somebody out with tearing apart their ignition and steering column for replacement of the lock cylinder, but also the gears for the actuator on the ignition. And what started out as a simple key ignition lock cylinder replacement has turned into this big ordeal. I'll be sure to include a link in the description of how to get to this point where your whole steering wheel, all the guts of the turn signal are taken apart. And the farther I got into this, I realized I need to just take the whole column out. So everything I had to take apart is right down here. First little spring came off the center console right here. And then these four little screws right here had to come off to get the turn signal switch out. This came apart pretty easily. And then the turn signal lever, this doesn't unbolt or anything. It actually just pulls straight out, but you actually might have to turn it a little bit. There's a little lip on it there. You just get it lined up. If it's not coming out easily, turn it a little bit and it'll pull out. Then these 4 bolts off of this bracket up underneath the steering column. And this is the other bracket. I'll show you where both of those went. And this little push rod came off as well. And that goes to your high beam, plugs in underneath there, and it goes down to this little actuator here, which pushes down for your lights. Oh, and I had to remove the bezels. Can't forget about those. Little plastic bezels come off. This just had 4 little screws on it. And this guy here too, just 2 little screws to take that guy off, super easy. And of course a mess of wiring, which honestly is not really that bad. We have this little wire harness there, these 2 guys here, which were on top of the steering column. This guy is for the turn signal. There's another one, yeah, this guy here, that was for the lights. This guy was to the, on the side right here for the lights as well. This guy right here. So fortunately, they're all different, so they'll only plug into one spot. So that actually really is not that hard. Once you have all those guys disconnected and your bezel apart, taking these brackets off really is not that hard. Yeah, this had the 4 bolts on it. This one here at the bottom of the steering column. Those 4 bolts to the bottom of the column, and then the bracket, 2 bolts holding the bracket onto the Jeep itself. And then up at the firewall, this little bracket here, 2 bolts holding the to the steering column, and then 2 more bolts to take it off from right up underneath there, the bottom of the column into the firewall. So I put the bolts back where they go as I'm taking things off, just so I can keep things organized. Remembering where they go is half of my battle. You might do things different, but that's how I like to do it. And now my steering column is mostly free. I just have to unbolt it under the hood. And yeah, this is on a 1994 YJ with an inline 6 with a non-tiltable steering column. So now the last thing I have to do is unbolt the steering column from the intermediate shaft, which is right down there at that pinch joint. I've got it marked with a little bit of my daughter's fingernail polish. Thank you for letting me use that. I just have to undo that 1 bolt and the steering column will pull out of there, and I marked it to keep everything in the same relation, so I'm going to put it back exactly in the same spot. But yeah, as I mentioned, this started out as simply replacing the lock cylinder. And then I should have known that it wasn't the lock cylinder that was busted, that it was the gears there. Then the more I got into this and having trouble getting access to those, I determined, you know what, it's going to be easiest just to remove the whole steering column. So once you undo all those wire looms, unplug those, unbolt a few brackets, your steering column just slides right out here. So this will be a lot easier than trying to get up underneath the dash, trying to work on everything, get the center, the column disassembled. Yeah, I just want to take this inside and work on it in a nice, comfy shop. Now the column will just slide out. Pretty easy. There we go. And now I can work on it from the comfort of my own shop. Now the next battle on the steering column here is separating this shroud right here, getting this part off so that we can get to the gears on the inside of the ignition cylinder there. So to take this off, there are 3 little screws, which you can just barely see if you prop your shaft of your steering column up on your shoulder. Get a light down in there. And deep down in there, I've got one out already, number 2. But boy, these are gonna be a pain to get back in place when I am done. So you can just barely get a light on it and one eyeball and a long screwdriver. Where'd he go? There it is. 3 little screws, and there we go. Finally, we are separated. Those are going to be a bear to get back in. Maybe I can take off this lower one, might separate into 2 pieces. Pull this last little screw out before I lose it. There we go. So there we go. We got our little gear out of there. And yeah, it's got a broken tooth there. And a few of the little teeth are kind of worn down, but also that top mechanism there, the teeth on it are actually worn down as well. So we'll be getting a new kit here. This little part, the rod just disconnects right here. Slide that out, there's a little spring back here. Gotta pay attention to all these little parts. And this is actually the mechanism that starts your vehicle. Let's see, that would be, yeah, there's 4 different settings. So let's see, that's start, that's on, that's off, and that's accessory. So the accessory there, off, on, start. So earlier in the video when I mentioned taking these 4 little bolts out to take out the turn signal switch here, this little mechanism, that was incorrect. These were part of separating these 2 shrouds here after this was off, but that's in my previous video. We're gonna order ourselves a new mechanism for the ignition here. This is just a cheap little plastic gear. That's great, thanks Chrysler. And then this little metal piece here, which is actually kind of worn down too, which is a little surprising being that this is plastic. What I think is gonna be super helpful to you guys though is the next video where it comes to reassembly of all this, because there's a lot of little intricate parts. How to put together the key release, the little spring there, these screws. There's another little bracket right down in here. There's a lot of little intricate parts. So be sure to follow this series. The next one, it'll be super helpful as we get this back together. So thanks for watching and have a good day.